Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Realty Report. With today, I have a special guest for you, a weapons expert. I'm going to bring him on in, Mr. Schuyler Robertson. Let's wait for Schuyler to come on in.
Hi, Craig. How you
Schuyler,
doing today?
how are you today, Schuyler?
Doing good. Doing real good.
Man, it's a pleasure, bud. We finally get to hook up after some time of me being down and me being lucky enough to find your old email. I appreciate you getting back to me, man. Thank you so much for coming on, bud.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here.
All right, I had to make like a last second switch with some equipment. So if my sound is a little low, I'm doing the best I can. So if you could hear me, fine. If you could hear me, just give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, I can hear you great.
All right, good. And I could hear you pretty well. So let's get on with it. Now, listen, I could just briefly, tell everybody, about your 30 years, your military experience, the articles you've written. I mean, your expertise. But I think it would be easier, if it's okay with you, if you could tell my listeners and forever out there who is going to come across this, a little bit about your background. Not a little bit, if you could tell us about who you are, man, and why you're so qualified.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, I joined the Army right after high school, spent some time in the 82nd Airborne and 9th Infantry Division. And then I got out, went to college, was still in the National Guard, became an NRA firearms instructor, became a deputy sheriff for a number of years, took a break from the Guard, went back in 07, deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Then I started contracting. And during that time, I started working for attorneys as an expert witness in use of force. So essentially what that means is they send me all the information on the case. I look at it and decide whether or not it was a legitimate self-defense or not.
Got you. Let me, it's an extensive background. I got to tell you, I do a lot of different things on my podcast, talk to a lot of different, I'm all about, I try to create a show, and we're just, basically starting on the YouTube end of things with, it's all about life journeys. Everybody's got a story to tell, but personally, I have interest that I personally I'm attached to, and one of them is the right to bear arms and self-defense, and in many areas. And you being an expert in this field, there's so many questions and things that are gray, and people maybe sometimes can lose their life over a hesitation, and you could probably speak on that yourself. You don't want to be too quick to use a weapon, never, and you
don't want to be too slow.
Right. I mean, that's really the long and short of it. Have you, I know you're used as a expert witness in cases. Have you seen both ends of the spectrum? Obviously, I mean, have you seen both ends of the spectrum, or just really one side?
Most of what I see are people who are, again, working in a gray area. They may have gotten in an argument with someone. They may have been somewhere they shouldn't have. And a lot of times the district attorneys will go, well, you were at a bar having a drink, therefore you had impaired judgment. What they don't take into account is that if a reasonable, sober person would do the same action the defendant did, however much they may have had to drink is irrelevant.
Gotcha.
And a lot of what I do is having to explain things to a jury. And a lot of times it's explaining what the threat was that the defendant faced. Sometimes they'll say, well, he was reaching for something, you don't know if it was a weapon. So you didn't know there was a threat. Well, you don't have to be 100% positive. If someone says, "I'm going to kill you," or words to that effect, if they start reaching for where a weapon could be, like a glove compartment, you don't have to actually wait to see the weapon. In fact, if you wait to see the weapon, it's too late. And that can be demonstrated in court very easily.
Gotcha. That's a great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, which is why police are told, if you tell someone, keep your hands in plain sight, and they start reaching for their waistband or in a glove box, or
they have the authority, right?
Because by the time you see the weapon, it's too late.
Too late. Gotcha. To me, that makes complete common sense, but and I'm not here speaking on anybody else's behalf.
Another
to
area
me, it makes total sense.
Yeah, another area that comes in is when the attacker is not armed. Or now in that case, you're looking at what's called disparity of force. So it may be a 6 foot, 250-pound man against a 5'1", 120-pound man.
Right.
And if in that case, the amount of damage that the bigger man can do is definitely in the realm of lethal force.
Absolutely.
Because there's a police training manual. It's written by a guy named David Justy Myers. Actually, no, it was quoted in his book, but because he was talking about the use of police impact weapons and flashlights. But the data he collected said that in I can't remember the term he used, but basically a fight for your life, unarmed, with equal training. So 2 people completely untrained, 2 black belts, whatever. The much bigger person is going to have such a significant strength advantage that in the case of like a 6 foot, 250-pound versus a 5'1", 120, the smaller man only has about a 10% chance of survival.
Right.
And that also plays with multiple suspects.
Gotcha.
And that there have been a lot of cases where prosecutors have said, well, you had 3 guys attacking you, but they weren't armed. Well, the severity of the attack and the number of number of assailants, that he was facing a lethal threat.
Gotcha. And thank you for sharing everything you're going to share with us today. And by us I mean me, you, and everybody that's going to listen. I think it could help so many people. Coming from New York, if you didn't already get it, I try to hide it, man. It's hard.
Hey,
I tell my wife all the time I'm going to use a country accent. She said, forget it. They'll see right through it. Don't do it. But coming from New York City, and my whole life, and it doesn't truly, even though I'm a New Yorker, it doesn't align with my beliefs on the right to bear arms. Long story short, there's situations that arise in every state, but I'd like for you, I could get into start asking you just a few questions. Like one question, like what are some of the most common myths regarding self-defense when a weapon's involved? And everything we'll be discussing will obviously be with a weapon involved. Like, are there any common myths that people, that are out there?
One common belief, especially among some prosecutors, is that if someone has a knife, unless they're within arm's length, they're not a threat. And there's a police sergeant from Utah in the 70s. He did a study on how close is too close with a knife. And at the time, their on the firing range, one of their course of fire was from the 3-yard line, or
Right.
excuse me, the 7-yard line. So 21 feet. They had to draw and fire 2 rounds in, I believe it was 3 seconds. And
Gotcha.
what he found is that, actually, no, it's 2 seconds, which is very quick. At 21 feet, someone with a knife can run to you and stab you at the same time you fire your 2 rounds. And in self-defense, a tie equals a loss.
Wow.
So
Got
you need greater distance. And
Gotcha.
because there have been people who've gone to prison because they had someone pull a knife, but at 10 feet, 15 feet, and the prosecutor says, well, at 10 feet, they're not a threat. Well, yeah, they are. They can close the distance before you can react.
Absolutely. It's amazing that, we're speaking about self-defense from the aspect of when a firearm's involved, but it's pretty common. I was taught, my children, one of my sons who studies, the martial art world, whether it be MMA or whatever art it is that you're mastering in or taking or whatever the word we want to use, there's usually something that you go by, and it's called, it's everybody has a different word for it, but the code of conduct, that space, and it's usually, in your mind, I'm only going to let somebody in a threatening situation, where voices are starting to get amped up out in the street and you start to feel your heart race a little bit, those emotions. And we're not speaking about weapons here, but you're only going to let somebody get within that 3 foot, 4 foot, whatever area that code we've determined where you feel there's a threat involved. Now, of course, we're not talking about, a firearm, which, you could be, like you said, further away. But even with hand combat, there's only so close, and I'm speaking on my behalf. I'm an old timer, washed up, right? But I'm just saying, I'm only going to let you get so close to me if I feel that I'm going to have to defend for whoever, myself, because I'm going home.
Right.
And I have to go home. I have to make it home to my family, grandchildren, whatever the case is. So you're only going to get so close to me.
And that's why I also, in addition to firearms, I recommend people carry pepper spray, because that's a nice intermediate between empty hand and lethal force. And I've had to use pepper spray on dogs that have been off leash more than people. And
yeah, well, that's something I wouldn't think of. Yeah.
Yeah, I would hate to have to shoot a dog.
Yeah, and I love animals. I understand, but it's not lethal. It's just going to subdue.
And if someone is, like you said, getting in your face, your first step is say, hey, man, I'm sorry I offended you. And I'm a big believer in putting your hands up like this.
Always.
To an observer, it looks like you're showing, look, I'm not a threat, but actually you have your hands up so you can block if you have to.
Right.
But you're saying, hey, look, I'm sorry if I upset you. Apologize. Do whatever you have to say to de-escalate.
To try to de-escalate. Exactly.
There's this one writer named Masad Ayub. He's been a police officer since the 70s. And he's written a vast amount of books and articles on the subject. But what he recommends is take a matchbook, wrap a $20 bill around it, and secure it with a rubber band. And if someone gets in your face and is trying to pick a fight, take that out and say, hey, I'm sorry I pissed you off. Why don't you go have a few beers on me, and then toss it to them. Because one thing I can say, pride is not worth going to jail over. If you and somebody else start exchanging words, bumping chests, start escalating, and then it turns into a fight, that's mutual combat. That's not you being assaulted. And if you engage with someone and it turns to a fight, and then you start to lose, you can't pull out a gun because at that
You're
point
on
it's
the losing
manslaughter.
end, right?
Right. It's like you willingly chose to get into this situation. If you can avoid the situation, avoid it. And again, if there are witnesses that say, yeah, this guy attacked Craig here. Craig said, hey, he apologized. He said, hey, I'm sorry. He said, here, go have a few beers on me. And the guy's like, not good enough.
Absolutely.
At that point, you're pretty much clear to use pepper spray. And of course, after you spray, run. Then once you're in a safe place, call 911. That's another big mistake people don't realize is they don't realize that in our legal system, whoever calls 911 first wins.
Is the winner. I've learned that the hard way, and not with taking a life, thank God. But just, as a younger person, and coming from, let's just say, a background where you didn't call the police, you didn't believe in that motto, and that worked two ways. You weren't trying to get somebody else in trouble. You were just going to handle your problems, your situation on your own. And if that meant you got your ass kicked, you didn't call the police. That meant if you kicked somebody's ass, you were expecting them not to call the police. But as you become an older person, you find yourself getting arrested numerous times because you defended yourself. And I'll just keep it at that.
Yeah. And
with no weapons.
And you could have a crazy person, tries to attack you. You push them, you pepper spray, whatever. If they call 911 and say, this person attacked me, what a lot of people don't realize on the display terminals in the police cars, when the dispatcher starts plugging in information, that person's going to be listed as the victim.
Wow.
So
that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that automatically, that copy is going to be thinking this person is the victim when they might be the perpetrator. And if nothing
just because they called.
Right. And if both of you call 911, then at least the cops are going, okay, there's a he said situation here. I need to keep an open mind. But if you don't call the police at all, it makes you look guilty.
You may, right. Wow. This is I'm telling you, Schuyler, this is something I know already. I'm going to want to have you back on because I only had a short time. I know because this is an area I'm passionate about, and this is your field. So I know your passion is a lot greater than mine, but there's so many. Like, I only had a short period of time to share with some other content creators that I'm friendly with on YouTube. And when I told them I was I just had a loss in the family, so I didn't really have much time to prepare and do things. Like, that's why I'm working. I have a different studio that I usually work out of, or like a studio. I don't want you to think I'm this big wealthy guy, because I'm not. I keep it real. That's why we're the reality report, and always. But what I'm saying is somebody did ask me one question. Hey, actually, they didn't ask me a question. Somebody asked a show that I was watching today, and it had to do with, and I figured I have you on, I might as well ask it. It's not one of the questions that I had listed to ask you, but it's this. Did they change the law? A convicted felon, if it's so many years removed from your record, let's say it's 10, 15 years, and it was a non-violent felony, can you, depending on the state, obviously, because I know in New York City, I forget about getting a handgun. It's sickening, but whatever. Can a felon, in some cases, get a permit to carry or premise? Carry or premise. Non-violent felon.
Again, it's going to depend on the state. Sometimes you can get your rights restored, but that you need to contact an attorney and go through the court process to get that restored to you.
Gotcha.
And now I've had a couple of cases where I've had people who were felons use a firearm in self-defense. And in two of them, well, in one of them, the charges were dismissed because it happened in the home. And it was his wife's gun. And she was being attacked. So he grabbed the wife's gun and defended his wife. And there's what's called the choices of evils doctrine, or lesser of two evils. So you can break the law to prevent a worse crime from happening or a worse outcome. So if you're by yourself on a dock and there's a boat tied up that's not yours, you see somebody fall off a boat and the boat keeps going and it looks like they're drowning, you're allowed to take that boat that's tied up that does not belong to you. Technically, that's theft, but you can go save that person's life.
Wow.
And so in 3 of the cases I've dealt with, the charges weren't dropped. They let him plead to essentially disorderly conduct.
Gotcha.
This one is still pending. The other one, he was carrying concealed out in public, and they dropped the attempted murder charge, but he still went back to jail for a year for being a felon in possession.
Gotcha. I'm going to ask some questions that might, I'm sure you've heard them all. I'm going to try to ask some questions, and maybe they aren't so conventional, because some things to me maybe are common sense. That's why I said, and some aren't, maybe, what I consider something I don't need answered. I'm trying to think of things that maybe other people would want to hear. So are there incidences like where people could actually harm themselves either prior to the incident or post incident with a self-defense claim? They use a firearm, but maybe something was lingering prior, or they do something the wrong way post, but it's clearly self-defense. You understand? Maybe I'm confusing.
People metaphorically shoot themselves in the foot all the time. One thing they do, posting on social media. Like, don't do that. Don't post things about dispensing justice, or don't make it look like you were out trying to get into a fight.
Gotcha.
And the biggest thing people do post incident is talk to the police without an attorney present.
And I was going to get to that. Okay, good. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things, because being in a life or death situation is not normal for most people.
Absolutely.
They've never been in a gunfight. They've never pulled a gun. They've never had anybody try to kill them before. After that, your adrenaline's up. You're not thinking right. And you might make a statement that seems innocuous, that is going to be twisted and turned to make you look guilty. So if someone's coming across your front yard and they've got a brick in their hand, they said, "I'm going to kill you." You're telling them, halt, stop. They keep coming. They get to your flower bed. They're about 5 feet away, and you shoot them. Okay. At that point, they stated their intent. They had the ability, and they were close enough to use their ability. But instead of telling the police all of that, when they go, "What happened?" "Well, this guy was coming towards me. He walked across my flower bed and I shot him." Okay, so you shot him for being in your flowers. Well, no,
Wow.
but that's not going to come out till court, and by that time it's too late. Your best defense is, so after you call the police, don't say I shot someone. Say someone tried to kill me. I need police and medical. Okay, what do you need medical for? I have one person down with a gunshot wound. Well,
So
who
you're
shot him?
being as transparent.
You're being transparent without making an admission. You don't say I shot this person. When the police arrive, have your hands in plain sight, and when they go, what happened? This person tried to kill me. I want him arrested.
Right.
And when they say, well, how did he get shot? Tell them, officer, I'll cooperate fully with your investigation after I've spoken to my attorney.
I figured you were going to say that, and I was going to get to that. You answered my question.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't realize is the police are allowed to lie to you. When I was a cop, we called it tactical deception. So you let people, even if you have no evidence, you tell someone, look, we've got a witness. We got you on videotape. We know this happened. We just want to hear your side of it. Because if we don't hear your side of it, you're going to go down
Absolutely
for the full time. Give me some mitigating circumstances to try to help you. And the next thing you know, you've confessed. Or the police will go, yeah, it looks like self-defense. Can you come down to the station though and just fill in some blanks for us? Just help us paint a full picture. Oh yeah, sure.
Right. Try to get
and
put this puzzle together.
Right. And you think, oh, okay. Or, hey, we want you to be a witness against this guy. So can you help us fill in some stuff? And when you get to a police station, when they put you in the interview room, and they call it an interview room, not an interrogation room. They don't like to use the word interrogation, but it is an interrogation. They're going to put you in there. They're going to put you at ease, and they're going to get you used to answering simple questions. Oh, did you find the place okay? How was parking? Just have a conversation where you're answering simple, innocuous questions. That gets your guard down. Right. It relaxes you, your guard's down, and then they start in with the questions. And what you have to understand is there's only two things that are going to stop that interview. One is you ask for an attorney. The second is they get you to make a statement that gets you arrested. I had one case where it was a 70-some-year-old man. The incident happened at 11 o'clock at night. The detective started the interview at 5 in the morning. So this guy's been up for almost 24 hours, and this interview lasted a couple of hours. And towards the end, you could tell this old man is just out of gas. He's tired.
Delirious, right?
Yeah, he's giving one-word answers. He's going, yeah, just not even really paying attention. They made a big deal over the fact that, because they asked him the same question 15 different ways. Yeah. If his answer deviated a little bit, they go, well, you changed your answer. And then they ask him, well, is it possible the shooting didn't take place in the kitchen? Is it possible it actually took place in the backyard and you just don't remember it? Is it possible you don't remember? Well, I guess it's possible. Congratulations, you just confessed to second-degree murder.
Unbelievable.
And
because they're right,
yeah, and so
they're playing chess.
Yeah, and they know all the tricks. No matter how many detective shows you watch on TV, they're better at this than you.
And that actually, I apologize. Please go ahead, Schuyler.
Yeah.
There's something I don't want to lose my trend of thought. I want to ask this question next. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. And so there's two fights you're going to have: the one in the street and the one in the courtroom. Now you can tap out. This is like a
MMA.
Yeah, you can tap out, tag your partner, and let him fight for you. and that's your
Your
attorney.
lawyer. Yep.
And the sooner you do that, the better.
The better.
And if you do it like right at the scene, as soon as the cops pull up, hand them your attorney's business card and tell them, yeah, I'll make a full statement after I've talked with my attorney. Give them a call and we'll put an appointment in the books. You're cooperating, but you've exercised your rights. Stop talking.
So many, I don't want to say so many experts like yourself, because you're the first expert that I'm actually speaking to outside of hearing an expert. I didn't speak to them. I'm speaking to one now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But so many experts that I've heard on television will say just what you've said. And the perception is that, and I know this from a totally different, nothing to do with self-defense or even gun use. The minute you ask for an attorney, you're guilty. That's what, if you've done something wrong in your life, you know, and they'll tell you that without, this, I'm going back years, but the minute you've, and then the detective will say to you, I'm sure the cameras are off, well, you realize you're asking for an attorney, you know what you're saying, right? I don't know if they pull that today.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm going back.
It happens where they'll say,
that's terrible.
If you didn't do anything wrong, why do you need an attorney?
Yeah, exactly.
And they're gonna try to get you to waive your right to an attorney. Well, some cops will. I've seen some detectives that as soon as you ask for an attorney, they go, "Thank you very much," and they stop the interview.
Makes the job easier.
Yeah,
and no sense.
And especially if it is a federal offense. So, like if the FBI is involved, do not speak to them at all without an attorney. And you don't speak to them. They ask a question, you whisper it to your attorney, and your attorney says, well, my client says this. Because they can't get your attorney for perjury.
Gotcha. But they can get you.
Yeah. A lot of people, and it's illegal to lie to the FBI. That's what Martha Stewart went to jail for. She didn't go to jail for insider trading. She went to jail for denying that when the FBI interviewed her, she denied that she participated in insider trading, and they proved that she lied. So she was convicted of lying to the FBI.
Right.
Yeah. And it's technically a different charge than perjury, but basically the same thing. And so you get your attorney on board. If they really want you as a witness, they can get you immunity. And because that's very common. Hey, this person's a witness against this defendant. We need to get him immunity.
Got you. Have you, actually, I was going to, it kind of sums up this question, but there's something I want to follow this with. I was going to ask you actually, but I think you kind of cleared it up. Like, what can be expected as far as dealing with law enforcement post-incident? An incident occurs, you've called 911, and I think you've kind of cleared it up, like what you can expect they're going to how they're going to speak to you. Yeah. And once you, and what you've basically said is, I want to make sure my listeners and whoever comes across this video, which I hope is many, they get this information and realize, God forbid there is an incident and they have had to use a weapon legally because their life was in danger. They call that attorney, or they immediately, like you said, so as the police are showing up, hopefully you have something, whether it be a phone number or that attorney waiting, or when they're bringing you in, whatever. That's what I was wondering. Is there anything they could expect?
Yes. You can expect post-incident, you're going to be arrested. If you've used a firearm, you're going to be arrested. You're going to go to a grand jury. You're going to be in jail. If you don't get bail, you can expect to be in jail anywhere from 6 months to 2 years awaiting trial.
I'm just taking notes. Amazing.
Yeah, it's we're supposed to have a right to a speedy trial, and in most states they say a year or less unless you waive that right. But post-COVID, the courts are so backed up. I've seen guys 2.5 years waiting trial.
And they were totally in the right. They were found totally in the right. They did 2.5 years.
And yeah, they did 2.5 years. And of course, at that point, it's like, well, if you plead guilty to disorderly conduct, we'll drop everything else and you'll just get time served. And that's a win for the prosecutors.
Yeah.
They still get a conviction.
You got a conviction, yeah.
And so that goes into their arrest, in their statistics. So when they're seeking re-election, they can go, we get convictions in 95% of our cases. Well, you charge someone with murder and you convict them of disorderly conduct. It's like, really? Yeah. You knew you couldn't make the murder charge stick. You knew you couldn't make the unlawful use of a firearm charge stick. But, if you're facing 20, 30, 40 years in jail and they give you an opportunity to go home that day by pleading guilty or taking a no-low plea, no-low contendere, where you're not pleading guilty, but you're saying, I recognize I cannot win based on this, so I'm willing to accept the punishment. And
gotcha.
So if you've been in jail for a year or 6 months and they say, well, if you plead guilty to disorderly conduct or simple assault, we'll drop everything else and you'll take time served, you'll be home today. That can be too good of a deal to pass up. And, I had one guy that he was facing attempted murder, 4 counts of unlawful use of a firearm. And I was able to show that the detective lied in his arrest warrant affidavit. And clearly this cop committed perjury when he signed his name and said, I swear that the preceding information is true under penalty of perjury. I was able to prove that he committed perjury.
Unbelievable.
And I submitted that report to the defense attorney on a Monday afternoon about 3:00. Tuesday, he shared that with the district attorney. 9 a.m. then on Wednesday, the DA offered the defendant a deal. He says, if you plead guilty to disorderly conduct, we'll give you time served and 3 years unsupervised probation. Or you can take your chance at trial. The deal's on the table for 5 minutes. Make up your mind.
5 minutes.
Yeah. You got 5 minutes to decide. And, of course, he took the deal.
99.9% would take the deal.
And you got to realize that even if you have an ironclad defense, there's still a 10% chance you're going to get convicted. There are people who go on jury duty who think, well, they wouldn't be, the police wouldn't have arrested them if they weren't guilty. You could look like a guy that bullied one of the jurors in high school, and he's going, oh, yeah, I think this guy's guilty. So you always have to account for that. But most of the time, jurors are pretty smart. They know what's going on. And if a prosecutor tries to BS them on something, they'll catch them on it. But there's always that risk that, even with an ironclad defense, there's a chance you're going to get convicted.
Here comes, I would say probably a stupid question, but the old saying, there's never no question stupid enough not to ask, right? Well, no, this one is, but I'm going to ask it anyway because there's somebody out there that might need to hear this.
Okay.
You happen to live in a state that New York, using New York. Now, upstate New York, I believe long guns, they're easier to get, like hunting and stuff. It's easier to get permits for. Um, Carry, conceal, forget. I mean, it's very, very hard, almost impossible. But what I'm going to ask is this. So let's even take the state you can't get a gun. You have possession in your premise, in your home, an illegal gun. Okay.
Okay.
You have been forced to use that illegal gun in your home, and I'm going to use something hypothetical here, to save your family. Your home was being intruded. They had weapons. You were about to die with your wife and kids. You've used that illegal gun and have taken a life. What happens in that crazy case scenario?
In that case, you're going to get arrested. You're going to face a long, drawn-out legal process. And you've probably got, I'd say, a 50-50 chance of getting convicted of something. They're probably going to, let's say, assuming that it is a legitimate 100% ironclad self-defense, they'll probably drop those charges, but you're going to go for the gun charge. One defense of that, we've already talked about it, is the lesser of two evils. If your attorney brings up and says, look, he lived in an area where this was a real threat.
Right.
And he decided the preservation of his family was more important than violating this gun charge.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully the jury will look at that and go, yeah, because if you are truly sympathetic, juries will look for a reason to acquit.
Got you.
The Bernard Getz case.
I remember it. I was a kid. I was younger. Yeah.
Yeah. His attorney was advised to use the lesser of two evils doctrine and explain that to the jury. He did not. And what ended up happening, apparently the jury spent like 30 minutes going over all the shooting charges.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
big case in New York.
They acquitted him on those. They spent, I think it was like 2 or 3 days on the possession of a firearm charge.
Yeah.
So the jury was looking for any reason to acquit. If the defense attorney had given him that reason, they probably would have gone. He probably would have walked.
And I appreciate that. And I'm sorry to give you such a hypothetical situation.
Oh, that's okay.
But there might, part of that is to deter anybody that might be holding on to something illegally, but they don't plan on using it, and God forbid that situation does ever happens. Well, now you just gave them an answer what they would be looking at, or could be facing.
And it also does erode the self-defense claim if you're using an illegal weapon.
It does.
It will.
Wow.
So it doesn't totally erode your claim of self-defense, but it weakens it.
Gotcha.
So if somebody has an illegal gun, their best bet is to get rid of it or do what they have to make it legal.
Gotcha.
Have a legal option.
Gotcha. I understand what you're saying.
If you live in a state where you can't have semi-automatic rifles, get a pump shotgun.
Gotcha.
Get something that's going to be compliant with the
I
law.
understand
So that,
exactly what. Yep. Let me ask you something, Schuyler. This has been great. I appreciate this so much. I hope this educates and for people out there that have these questions. What kind of is there a special kind of self-defense attorney, or is there a specialized attorney you should be looking for if you are faced with, God forbid, this scenario in a case where you had to use your legal concealed weapon and results in a death, and you're claiming self-defense? Is there a certain type of lawyer you should be looking for?
you
Defense
want
attorney?
yes, you want an attorney that has experience defending the innocent.
Gotcha.
Criminal defense attorneys are used to defending the guilty. And most of the time, what they will do is focus on mitigating circumstances. They figure you're going to get convicted anyway, so maybe they can drop it to a lesser charge. They can cut your time down. If you're facing 20 years and your attorney gets you 2 years, well, if you're a career criminal, that's a win.
Yes.
But if you're a regular person, 2 years in jail, 2 years away from your family, 2 years of not working, because you're going to walk out of jail with nothing.
Yep.
Every bit of equity is going to be gone. Everything you've ever worked for is going to be gone. You are literally going to be starting over. And if you're a career criminal, that's just the cost of doing business. If you're a law-abiding citizen, that's devastating. So get an attorney that's not going to just assume that you're guilty, that you're that they're going to plead, that it's going to be okay to plead it down. It's your defense is, I was completely right in everything I did. And you need to have an attorney that's going to argue that.
I'm sorry about that light. It's just like I told you, I had to make a makeshift studio at not the last minute, but I kind of had to make a makeshift studio. Yeah. So I want to be able to people to see me and you to see me. So that's great. It's great knowledge. I'm glad you answered that.
Yeah, it's crazy. If you can avoid using a public defender, do it, because they are so overworked. I've seen public defenders walk into court and they've got a box of like 20 or 30 cases that they're pleading that day. And they look at the docket to go, what's up next? They flip through the file and just go, okay, who is this? And they
have no clue because they're so overworked, right?
And all they want to do is plead this down, get the smallest possible charge. And again, if
that's that's a win.
If you're facing 10 years and you get 3, that's good.
It's a win. Yeah.
And I've seen attorneys that don't want to go to trial. So they start from the get-go.
Anything to get a deal, right?
Yeah,
they're just trying to get a deal.
And if you're in a self-defense claim, your claim is I was in the right. And what happens? This is what's known as an affirmative defense.
Okay.
We've all heard, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And affirmative defense is, yes, I shot that person. I committed the act, but I was right in doing so. And that has to be your defense. Now, you don't want to make that claim on the sidewalk to the cops. There's a time and place to get your side of events out. And that's not right when the incident happened. So
gotcha.
Get an attorney, stop talking, don't talk about it, tell your family, don't talk about this, don't post on social media. But when you get to court, you make this affirmative defense, the judge is going to instruct the jury, if you find that he was faced with a lethal threat that then therefore he's okay. He's going to all but say he would be wrong if he didn't shoot his attacker. Yep.
Wow. Got you.
Now, the other side of that coin, though, is you're giving up the innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
You said, yeah, I did it, but here's my really good reason for why I did it.
Right. I got you.
You know, if
I got you.
yeah, because if you're driving 30 miles over the speed limit and you get a ticket for it, and they, hey, that's reckless driving. Well, I had somebody, I was trying to get into the emergency room because they were dying.
Exactly.
Then it's
you.
Okay,
I got you. There was a circumstance that made you do this, right? I'll tell you, man. You see, I mean, I can't believe we've gone. That's how, I mean, interesting this is to me, and I hope others find it the same, because it's so important. I believe in not just well, I'm all, us old as we get old in today's world, but you're seeing this stuff every day. I was going to put some clips up, but there's no need to. I mean, every day we're reading about something, who's claiming self-defense or who's just outright, it's just always something going on. I have two questions. At the end, I'm going to ask where people could find you, if there's anywhere they could, see some of your work that you do with writing and your author stuff. I know I had read some articles you had written, and they're great. If you could give that information. But there's a question I'd like to ask you to wrap it up, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
How should somebody react in there? It's the middle of the night, hypothetical again, but it happens. It's the middle of the night, you're sleeping, your family's sleeping, and you believe you hear there's somebody in your home. And we could surmise we're on the second floor, we hear noise downstairs. How do you think somebody should react? They have the safe with the gun, or maybe the gun's under the bed. Not everybody keeps a handgun in the safe. Wherever they keep their weapon.
Well, the first thing you need to do is, typically with married couples, the wife, like, hey, I heard something. You go check it out.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now that doesn't mean she can go back to sleep. She needs to be sitting up with a phone in her hand, ready to call 911. And so now my plan is, in that case, I'm going to put on my body armor, grab a rifle or shotgun, whichever I feel I need. And I also have a handgun for backup.
Of course.
And then I'm going to be turning lights on, because don't try to play ninja with someone.
Yeah.
Turn the lights on in the house. And say, hey, who's there? Because at this point, you don't know what that is. That could be one of your kids that forgot a toy in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
That could be your drunk neighbor that got the wrong house and they came in through the sliding glass door because they didn't want to wake, they forgot their key. They didn't want to wake their wife up, but they're in your house, not theirs.
Yeah. Could be a 19-year-old forgot their keys climbing through the window. Whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or your 14-year-old that never does anything wrong, that snuck out to go be with their friends, or your daughter that's wanted to go see her boyfriend and you told her no.
We were all there.
Yeah. And so, who's there? And I would not go farther than the farthest bedroom. Because the way my house is set up, the master bedroom is farthest away from the rest of the house. So you have to come down the hall. I wouldn't go farther than the last occupied bedroom, and I'm going to hold there until I make the determination. If I think, hey, this ain't right, and of course my dogs are going to be letting me know what's going on too. But if I make the determination, this is not a friendly person, at that point, I'm going to collect everybody up. I'm going to be pounding on doors. I'm going to say Alamo. That's our code for here's what's going on. Everybody gets into the master bedroom. The wife's calling 911.
So there's a plan in place.
Yeah, I'm going to announce I've got a gun. The cops are on their way. Then we're going to go back to the bedroom, secure ourselves in there, and wait. I am not going to go trying to clear my house by myself.
Got you.
A lot of people think, oh, yeah, you got to go clear your house and check it out. If you seriously think there's an intruder in your house, even if you spent 20 years in the Green Berets, you've done countless building searches. What you don't have with you is the rest of your team. You're by yourself.
Yeah.
There are only one or two agencies that train one person room clearing. That's like the British Special Air Service, Delta, or ground branch. It's like unless you're trained to that level, don't try it. There is nothing in your house worth getting shot over except your family members.
Absolutely. I agree.
You've got insurance. If you're locked in your bedroom and you hear someone breaking your TV and whatnot, so what? That's what you've got insurance for. It's not worth getting killed over.
Absolutely. Everything's replaceable outside of a life. That's it.
And getting back to the legal system, the only thing worse than going through the legal system in a post-self-defense incident is getting killed or crippled by your attacker.
Wow.
So keep that in mind.
I agree.
If there is a way to avoid the situation, do it. If it means running away, if it means I'm going to duck out this emergency exit. If someone says I'm going to go stand in the parking lot and kick your ass. Cut through the kitchen.
Let's try to avoid getting to that courtroom, right? Find
another exit. Do whatever you got to do to get away. And so what if one of your friends goes, "Oh, you ran away like a little punk." Yeah, guess what? I'm alive, and I don't have to go to court.
Absolutely, and I'm not worried about being judged by a jury. I got you. We do everything possible to avoid that situation. Schuyler, I just want to. I'm good. I mean, there's so many questions I would love to ask you about guns of preference and stuff like that, but that wasn't what this was about. I'd love to have you on again.
Yeah, I'd love to come back, even on the self-defense issue, the legal aspects.
Yeah, I'd like to make another show where we can do that. Yeah.
And people can find an
archive
of articles I've written if they go to the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, USCCA, on their website. They can find me there.
Awesome. That's awesome because because I've read some of your stuff and it's crazy, not crazy, but before I even reached out to you and read your stuff, I was reading Concealed Carry. I was reading that for a few years, that magazine, online, of course. And it's crazy. And now here we are talking, but I would love to have you come back on someday when it's good
Anytime.
for you. We'll always keep contact, where we can talk about different types of, long guns, short guns, and from a perspective of, being an enthusiast, but, what might be, comfortable for a lady, a man, all different types of things. I'd love to have that dialogue, an open dialogue with you.
I'd love to have that.
But otherwise, I thank you so much for coming on today and being part of now the Reality Report family.
Well, thank you.
Schuyler,
It was
so
great
much.
being here.
All right, awesome, and thank you for everything. And I hope to speak to you. I'll keep in touch with you. I'll shoot you an email, and we'll set up another appointment.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, Schuyler. You have a great weekend, bud.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.